Thank you so much to the World HRD Congress and Dr. Bhatia specific to allow Pinkerton to come and talk about risk specifically in the areas of HR. While I've been talking about risk and how risk is looked into at various forums in the chief security officers meets, various forums where risk is generally identified in organizations by people who manage the risk domain in those organizations, could be security professionals, could be others. Over here today, I would like to suggest and show you how risk is also there in the HR domain and why the HR colleagues, the HR fraternity needs to get more actively involved in the kinds of risks the organization has and what can be impacted and how it can help in mitigating those risks as well. Once the session is over, I'll try not to take too much time. I think we're running a paucity of time as well. I'll be open to have questions and answers, and in case the time does not permit, I'll be around today. Anyone who would want to have specific questions regarding their organization, particular risk or something that we can help and mitigate, we can definitely do that. I've got my colleagues over here as well, so we are all available in case you want us to do that. So just as we start, I think I have a small video, not more than 2 minutes, and that will save a lot of time for you to suggest what we're trying to say over here. Okay, thanks for watching that one. That saves a lot of my time and breath to talk about Pinkerton. So I'll just jump to the topic very quickly. How we look at risk from our experience of 165 years that we bring across is the Pinkerton risk wheel, which is accepted in the risk fraternity as one of the most coveted ways of looking at risk in your organization. So if you look at it, it basically breaks into 4 quadrants: operational and physical risk, market and economic risks, technology and information risk, and hazard and event risk. And now if you start correlating it with the HR fraternity as we move ahead in the presentation, you'll be able to see how these can be correlated in the ever-changing risk landscape that we have. That's a big thing that would come, and that's exactly my endeavor is in the next 5, 10, 15 minutes that I spend with you over here to look at it, how we can correlate the risk wheel to the HR fraternity. So if you look at the total risk perspective that we have, there can be multiple kinds of risks that may come up from the hazard and event risk or operational, physical, technology, or market. I'll just give you a quick example. A lot of us as HR folks organize events in our organizations. We are supposed to conduct offsites, we're supposed to conduct annual days, a lot of other things that we conduct. Have we ever thought of looking at it from a risk perspective? What risk can it bring out? What risk can it bring out if the event goes wrong? If something happens from a physical risk perspective or from any other risk perspective, what would it create as human resource that we are supposed, the valuable people for which we're doing the annual day, will we be able to protect them? Have we really planned about it? I think that's one key area of differentiator that I see in India. I go and talk about a lot of it in the other countries as well. In India, we have is something which is referred to as a more reactive approach rather than proactive approach. For some of those who understand Hindi, it is the Ram Bharose thing. Nothing good, nothing bad will happen to me, my organization. I am a very devoted one. But we don't look at it from a proactive approach to think and imagine what could go wrong and what steps do we have to take to ensure that it does not go wrong. I'll give one quick example, and that will correlate to your workplaces as well. One of the areas when we look at HR security, we talk about privacy, and then we have CCTV cameras across organizations, and then CCTV monitoring, and then HR has questions in terms of where and how much the CCTV should be. But what we are not looking at as perspective is that that's one of the best tools for you if you are proactive in the organization. A lot of time when Pinkerton does investigations, CCTV is used more as a post-mortem rather than a proactive tool, right? So when an incident has happened, they would call us and say, can you come and investigate? We look at the CCTV, And so many times we say that this person was not even supposed to be here at this point of time. So if someone was proactively watching the CCTV at any point of time, would have averted the same incident by ensuring that person would not have been there or should have taken the corrective steps there and then, rather than doing the postmortem later on once the incident has happened, right? So a lot of these practices come, and we do a lot of investigation specifically into the so-called sexual harassment cases these days, or the Me Too movement. And a lot of time we see this, that a lot of time people are not supposed to be where they are, and a lot of these incur, and someone is not really watching the CCTV, for example. So I'll try to make it correlate to the work experience. So our entire intent basically is to look at the threat, look at the probability of it, look at the business impact, and give a risk factor. So it's about giving an objective, measurable quotient to the risk that you see in your areas. So now when we talk about risk and we look at the operational and physical risk, we talk about a lot of things from the HR perspective. So now looking from the HR perspective, do you have the recruitment partners? Of course, everyone in the HR fraternity have recruitment partners, but have you ever screened those recruitment partners as a partner due diligence program before you actually got them onboarded? Do you have the right kind of background screening partners? So there are a lot of background screening companies, but do they have the right kind of background screening partners? While doing the background verification, for example, have you taken the consent of the candidate? And is it an explicit consent where the candidate has signed? As we are hiring, and we've been talking about it for the last 2 days, we've been talking about the millennials and the entire change in the workplace environment. Everything is changing. Don't forget, these millennials are very, very aware of their rights as well. And sooner or later, what we see in most of the West countries, you'll start seeing in India as well, where you will find one day one candidate will rise and say, I want to sue you because you never said that you will take me through this screening program. And I was not even aware of it. That's a breach of privacy, right? So we need to be aware of those facts, and these threats are not very far off. They are very near. As the government is coming in with the Justice Sri Krishna Committee report on various things, especially the PII, and we're talking about GDPR, trust me, that is even more stringent than GDPR, right? So we need to be aware of where and how we are dealing, because HR deals with the most personal, private, identifiable information of the individuals. So HR is going to be a very, very key player once this thing comes up. And data is all being talked about, and data is what the challenges will be coming up to as well. What we also need to look at is the risk in terms of the global compliance risk. The hiring pattern now is changing. We do a lot of backgrounds. We see the hiring pattern is changing. It's very likely a person has gone down to the West, did his engineering or MBA, then was in the Middle East for some years, and now coming back to India. So you really need to know the laws of each and every country while you're hiring the candidate, or while you're going back and doing their background checks on that. And that's where it's important that when you choose a partner, you need to choose a partner that gives you the right advice and says that, hey guys, this is what you can't do in a particular country, and this is what you have to be ensured, because one small mistake over there can just ruin your brand image. Moving from there, when you look at the other aspects of risk, remaining on the quadrant of operational and physical risk from the HR perspective, you look at the insider threat, right? So you have the wrong kind of person in the system, right? That creates the insider threat. Now that person may sabotage, may leak information. There could be multiple factors to that risk. Workplace violence, right? We investigate so many cases every day where we talk about workplace violence, where we did not realize in the first place that there could be behavioral issues and there could be workplace violence that may happen. Workplace violence is also happening from a perspective of when we are scaling down a lot of time our factory units, and specifically that applies to the manufacturing side largely. And we've had clients that have come up to do the entire security management for them when they are closing down a factory, because that is where your human resource department is most vulnerable and it has a risk. And we all know the unfortunate incident that happened with Maruti a few years ago, and the HR professional lost his life. So are you looking at those risks when you are sitting down at your boardroom and you're just taking a pen and saying, okay, let's close down that factory. Someone from HR will go and hand over the pink slips, and that's the end of it, right? That's not the end of it. So are we looking at risk from those areas as well? Are we doing individual due diligence for positions of trust? That's very, very important. You're hiring a procurement guy. Have you gone back and see what does the market say about that procurement guy? Is he living beyond his means? Which means he is making money somewhere or the other, right? So some of these aspects are very, very important because as we will build trust, as we build organization, HR is going to be the central of the entire thing, right? Skip tracing. Skip tracing basically refers to, are you in track of someone who has moved away from your organization without telling you, right? Is he using your credentials somewhere else, right? Why did he not resign properly? Did he run away with some data? Do you need to go back and track and trace him? Do you want him to become back to the book in terms of that? A lot of time we leave it at that, saying that, oh, it was not such a vital position, let him have wherever he has moved on. But look at the damages that they can do once they have something on their mind. And that's one of the reasons why they have vanished in thin air, right? And in terms of high risk, specifically with regards to the terminations, right? When you do a large level of terminations, what is it, all the aspects of it? Do you want you to be there on the glass door for all the wrong reasons, or on the Facebook for all the wrong reasons, or you want to be there for all the right reasons? And specifically, as I've said earlier, when we are dealing with Generation Z, millennials, and as we call them, they are very, very tech savvy, and that's where it becomes very, very important for us to look at it from that perspective as well. Now, when we look at some of the others, is about security and risk, and are we organizing women's safety training programs? We're talking about inclusivity, we're talking about gender equalness, we are trying to increase our women workforce in our organization. That's one of the initiatives that HR is taking. But are we organizing good work culture by giving them enough women safety training programs, right? Are we doing site risk assessments? One of the jobs of HR is to keep their folks safe. So when you are setting up a new factory, are you ensuring that your risk team has done a proper analysis? Are you able to look at the social and economic risks that come around it? Are the physical risk around it? Is the site safe? Will it be safe for people to travel in the evenings? So a lot of these assessments are what is required. And trust me, a lot of these things happen in the West whenever they try to set up something. And some of these aspects we see is completely or largely missing when these things are being set up in India. We just go ahead, we set it up, and then we start thinking, oh, this could have been a problem, so let's provide the cabs. If cabs is a problem, let's provide another means of transport. But had we looked at it in the first place itself, right, maybe that expense would not have come. Maybe you would have moved your site to somewhere else, which was much more safer from those practices. Then you have about crisis response trainings, right? A lot of organizations, when we go and when they ask us to come down and consult, I hardly see organizations in India which have run crisis response trainings. There would be 6 months, a fire drill, maybe once in a year kind of a fire drill, and that's where it is, right? But there is no routine checks happening in terms of a crisis response training. We are only talking about fire as one of the crises. We are not talking about earthquakes. We are not talking about someone really falling sick. Is there a drill to it? Is there someone really having an SOP which he is able to pick it up and move from there? And then we have the other risk, which is, do we do the employment and the credit check? Do you do the criminal check? There is data theft that happens, so your brand reputation checks, social media. Social media is something I'll touch on a more detail as well as we move ahead. But these are some of the risks that we very clearly see where the HR plays a more and more vital role in the entire thing. When you look at the insider threat, and I'll just develop on it for a minute, where the individuals with valuable information, individuals who are vulnerable and employees working at strategic sites, it's important for HR folks to look at these people, and these people should be definitely looked at a closer eye as well. When we look at the insider threat, how do we mitigate them? Is you can do the screenings, you can do awareness, you can take operational measures, you can provide the reporting channels to ensure that, some of these areas are very well covered for you in your organizations as well. Social media. I think this is something I'll touch upon a lot of time. The media itself has reached out to me on my opinion on social media. And I've always said that the social media is bound to remain. We are talking about the next level of generation, which is always there on the social media. I think it's a responsibility of us folks, HR, how to utilize that platform to do much better and awareness sessions in our organizations. Are we telling them what is confidential information and what is non-confidential information, what can be shared and what cannot be shared? I'll just take, while the slide is self-explanatory, I'll just take a minute to share a story of a client with you guys, where one of the employees left an organization and he joined a competitor organization while the other employee was still working in that organization. Both of them were connected on one of the social media platforms. And what happened, there was an audit that was happening for a client, and he just passed on the information asking, what are your plans in the evening? He said, I can't come out in the evening because we have this audit going on. It was just a casual conversation. And then the next question he says that, so, how's your boss doing? He said he is having a real tough time, right? Because the client is really pushing different questions. The moment the information reached the competitor, that person released that information to the sales team. The sales team contacted the client right at their US office to say that, hey, we've heard that you were having a trouble over there. We can run your entire project in a much, much better way. And the client was zapped and surprised that how can this information reach so soon within a couple of hours. And unintentionally, this was a conversation between two colleagues. He just said that there is an audit, I'm busy. It was very easy, so we need to make them aware what can really go on the social media and what cannot, because all he did was an unintentional conversation with another ex-colleague, and forgetting that he has actually become an ex-colleague and working with the competition. And that's a very common thing that we come across as we move on as well. Now, when we talk about the importance of social media checks, as you can see over here, there are various things that you need to check on the social media platform now when you're looking at it from an employee perspective, right? We've had situations where we have protected one of the leading manufacturers in defense for one of their employees getting radicalized. We were able to identify that, we were able to highlight that, and we were able to isolate that individual immediately. Otherwise, the damage could have been huge for that. And that's the reason why we need to keep a tab on what's happening on the social media and what we are doing. Risk in terms of terminations. I think the HR perspective, you need to really look at what is the dynamics of the individual or individuals that you are asking or you're terminating, what is the law, how does it work, and also look at the behavioral aspect of it as well. What is the impact that it will create? Now, some of these are the risks that you see and deal with in every day, but you may not have looked at it from a risk perspective. You may just thought of it just as part of your business as usual. But I think that was most of it that I had to mention. I have no reasons to talk about Pinkerton over here because this is more generic. We've been there, we serve the Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 companies across the world. We help them mitigate in various factors of the risk wheel as we looked at it. We do about 20,000 applicants background screening a month. That's the kind of volume that we handle. So there are a lot of aspects to it. We are around in case you need any information that you need. Just to mention over here, if you want some of these aspects, I could see people clicking on those slides. You can also refer to the India Risk Survey that we do with FICCI every year. We'll very soon come out with the 7th edition later this year. It's one of the most coveted reports. It goes all the way up to the ministry and the government, where when they initiate policies, while setting up from the government perspective, they refer to these reports. So you will find this report being referred. A lot of CEOs, when they do their talks, they would refer about the India perspective. They talk about how risk. It would have opinion of more than 600 people across the industry of how they have rated risk in India, right from which is the biggest risk and which is the least risk as well. Well, I'm open in case if anyone have any questions. I hope I am on time and I have not taken too much of your time. So if anyone has any questions, I am more than happy to answer them right now for the benefit of all. Or people can reach out to us on a one-on-one session, on a sidebar talk as well. I'm completely okay with whichever way. So if anyone has any questions, please, or anything that you would want to ask, and I can help you out in your organization as a suggestion. Well then, thank you so much for your patience listening. Thank you once again. Thank you, everyone.